Gerri Elliott received her bachelor's degree in political science from New York University. Mrs. Elliott started her tech career at IBM, spending almost 22 years there in key executive and management positions in strategy development, services and consulting, product management, and sales. As a leader at IBM, Microsoft, and Juniper Networks, Mrs. Elliott has transformed global businesses for more than half of her career. Now working at Cisco, she works as the first ever Executive Vice President and Chief Sales and Marketing Officer. Mrs. Elliott is responsible for worldwide sales and marketing, field operations, and partnerships across the globe.
Mrs. Elliott also served on several board of directors, including Imperva, Marvel Technologies, Mimecast, and Bed Bath & Beyond. She currently serves on the board of directors for Whirlpool and serves on its audit and finance committees. She also founded Broadrooms, a site devoted to executive women who want to serve on corporate boards. Mrs. Elliott, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview with us today.
And you're so welcome.
And if that bio was okay with you, we
Yes.
can jump into some questions.
Okay.
So my first question for you is that oftentimes the high-tech industry can seem very limited to math, science, and engineering graduates. But it seems that you focused your career on the side of the tech industry that doesn't fit this conception or stereotype. So could you talk a bit about the multifaceted nature of the high-tech industry?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And you know, all the companies that I work for in tech have many different disciplines, as you can imagine. There's not just the engineering side of the house, which has to develop the product, but you have to sell the product, support the product, market the product, order the product, build the product, deliver the product. So there's all different disciplines, whether it's sales, marketing, support, services, supply chain, operations, finance, all different types of disciplines that can support technology. And so I find it's like the best of all worlds. And being in all those different disciplines, I've been in 5 different areas, as you stated, across tech. I haven't written a line of code in probably 35 of my 40 years. I haven't written a line of code, but it still satisfies the tech in me, little bit of the tech geek that's in me, but also I get real pleasure from the other disciplines that I've been able to experience over the 40 years I've been doing this.
Mm-hmm. And I think with that versatility, it creates more opportunities too, because it brings together people of different mindsets and different strategies.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm a real advocate of ensuring that folks understand that tech doesn't equal STEM. You don't have to come from a tech background to serve in a tech company. I was a political science major, as you said. I was on my way to get a JD MBA when IBM found me and literally stopped me in a hall to ask if I wanted to work for IBM. So talk about being serendipitous, right? That was something I wasn't planning to do. And I argued with him and said, no, why would I want to go work for IBM? I'm going off to get my JD MBA. And I wanted a real business experience. And his question to me was, if I can prove to you that you can have more of a business experience and a business career at IBM, would you choose not to go after that JD MBA? And I said, well, you're not going to be able to convince me, but thank you for the conversation. Well, he ended up, that first sales call, I guess, because he ended up selling me on the fact that it's been, that I could, and he was right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Awesome. Nicole,
I think that transitions into the next question actually very well, because it's kind of how you're going down one path, but then that path can go into many different areas. And that brings me to my next point, which is that starting from a young age, many women in some capacity have probably felt the underlying stereotype of only men belonging in the tech world. In fact, until this year, I thought that I wanted to be a lawyer, even though my greatest passion had always been math. And so how at a young age do you think we should counteract this mindset in girls? And why is it so important for us to start this effort at a young age?
It is important to at a very young age, just be open. That's all. It's be open about different experiences, whether you're in middle school, high school, once you reach college. Experiment. different topics and different subjects. And when I was in university, I took computer courses for no other reason, just that I thought I'd be interested in it. And I found that I loved coding. When I went to IBM was like its own university, quite frankly. They took all shapes and sizes, all different types of disciplines, all different types of majors and minors, and chose to really develop and educate their new hires. And when I first started, I hated the sales side of the house. I said, no, I want to become a systems engineer. Once I came to IBM, I loved coding so much. I wanted to become a systems engineer. And it was IBM that steered me into sales, which is where I made my mark. So just being open and really being taking the opportunities that come to you, and not saying no, and experimenting a little bit to say, is this something that I really would like to do? And so it's what I tell my children. It's what it's an attitude that I think has helped me throughout my career.
And I think that kind of is relating to our next question as well, is in just attracting people into the high-tech industry. So my question for you is, when discussing developing diversity in the high-tech industry, specifically gender diversity, the framework of attraction, retention, and development is often used. So can you talk about the importance of this strategy and some initiatives that either Cisco or other companies you've worked with have incorporated to follow this framework?
So we don't actually call it just diversity here at Cisco. We call it full spectrum diversity, because it is diversity of race, gender, thought, experiences, age, religion, sexual orientation, veteran status. It is full spectrum diversity, and which is what we love, because if we're conscious about looking across our business and say, do we really have representation across that full spectrum? Does it make us better as a company? Do we have better conversations? Does it make us better leaders? And so that's how we think about diversity. And every one of those any one of those organizations I just talked about, or statuses I would talk about, have employee relations organizations attached to them. So I'm the executive sponsor for Women at Cisco, as an example. We might have another sponsor who has Blacks at Cisco, or veterans at Cisco, or each one of them have their own employee groups where we can talk about best practices. What does it feel like to be a female at Cisco? What does it feel like to be a vet at Cisco? And so it's almost like sororities and fraternities have sometimes make large universities feel small. It helps us in a company of 70,000 people. It helps those folks to feel like they have a voice, that there's a community, that there's support, and that we can have the open, honest, sometimes uncomfortable conversations about what it feels like to be a female at Cisco, or a vet at Cisco, or whomever.
And can you talk a little bit more just about the value you see in having those spaces and just having representation, having that diversity spectrum at Cisco, and just the importance of that?
We call it having a conscious culture. A conscious culture means that you are aware of all the diversity of your team, that you're aware of the fact that there's different personalities, there's different profiles. We profile each and every one of us in a set of profiles that say, is your instinct to be a teacher, or is your instinct to be an advisor, or is your instinct to be something else I won't remember. Mine happens to be teacher, advisor, or provider. Is your instinct to be a provider? Everybody has their instinct in terms of who they are and what their personality is. And we respect that. And we're conscious about it. And so having a conscious culture says that we talk about what those experiences are like in the company. Right now, we're having some very open, uncomfortable, but transparent conversations of what it feels like to be Black in the company.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean? And they're fantastic conversations, and it opens up the awareness of everyone in the company, whether it's your teammate or your leader or your employees. To have the ability to have that transparent conversation is just amazing. It's liberating. And they're difficult conversations, but they're ones that we need to have. And that culture is how I think you have a healthy environment where people want to stay.
Right.
A healthy environment where people want to come. There's a reason why we're the #1 best place to work in the world. We were honored to win that award this year from Best Places to Work. We take it very seriously, and we're humbled by it. But we also know that it means we have to continue to work at it.
Right.
And that's one of the ways we work at.
And I think it's very important that you have mentioned openness, both in a corporal aspect and also in the aspect of bringing more people into STEM. I think that's a very interesting point. My next question was, how do you envision the evolution of women's representation in the high-tech industry? And which steps do you hope to see the tech industry take to further this cause?
You know, it's interesting. I've told the story 40 years ago when I started in this space. When I started working for IBM, my first line, my second line, and my third line managers were all women. So I thought when I started in tech that this was the most diverse industry ever. I thought, oh my God, there's only women in tech. How cool is this? And then at the end of my career, and then I spent pretty much 30 something years being the only woman in the room. And then now I'm in a company where the majority of the C-suite happens to be female. Our CIO, our CFO, our chief sales and marketing officer, our customer success officer, our chief communications officer, our chief human resources officer are all women. And so my career's been like a barbell. You know, I started heavy on with female representation in the very beginning, super heavy on female representation, particularly in the C-suite at the end of my career or the latter half of my career. But that middle has been very, very thin in terms of how many women have been in the room with me over the years. And so it's been a struggle to retain women in tech. It's amazing. We can attract them and we lose them somewhere in middle management. We lose, you know, this is not at Cisco, I'm talking broadly across the industry itself. And then we went through this period where we weren't getting the feeders. We weren't getting enough STEM graduates. We weren't getting enough of the bench coming in at the lower levels. Now we have what's called the CSAT program, which is our right out of university into the sales and marketing organization that I lead. And 45% of that this year were female, and we're diverse actually. So we're really proud about that number. But we went through a period where we weren't seeing enough of the bench. And I think it's what tech is in everybody's life right now. You are both tech children. You grew up in the tech boom. So it's not tech for tech. It's tech for pick an industry. It's tech in retail. It's tech in travel. It's tech in transportation. It's tech in manufacturing. It's tech in hospitality. It's tech and technology is infused in absolutely every single industry. And so that's what's so exciting. And that's why I think we'll attract much more diversity into technology, because it's not just about going in a room and writing a line of code. It's thinking about, how do I market in a tech-oriented way? How do I sell in a tech-oriented way? It's click and mortar, not just bricks and mortar any longer. And so that's what's so exciting about STEM. And so I'm hopeful for the future that we will become a much more diverse industry than we've ever been before.
Right.
Right. And I think that's really important for our listeners to hear just about that. I mean, our world is becoming so tech-centered, and the fact that we all have the capacity to enter into that field, and find our passion in it as well.
You do. You do.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think kind of our last question here is if you have any final advice for any of our young female listeners. What is it important for them to understand as they step into higher education and potentially even these industries?
I think I would say what I said before in terms of being open,
Mm-hmm.
really trying to think about, my career has been interesting in that I always say it's a third, a third, a third. The first third of my career was doing things that I was supposed to do. You know, IBM was very structured when I started in my career. You did this, then you did this, then you did this, then you did this.
Mm-hmm.
The middle part of my career was where I felt like I wanted to branch out. I wanted to try things I'd never done before, disciplines I'd never been in before. And so I would take laterals. I would take, I would be curious about, I don't understand that part of the business over there or that part of the world. I'd like to move into new areas. And the latter third, I should say, of my career has been where it's been my passion. It's been heart and mind together. I've done what I've wanted to do because I really wanted to make a difference. And so when I look back on that and I think about you all just starting with your careers, it's easy now for me to look back and say, boy, it worked out to be that third, a third, a third. I didn't plan it that way at all. It's just the way it kind of worked out. I want to say, there are some times where you got to do what you need to do because that's how you're going to get ahead. But then you want to be open and you want to always keep yourself open to those new opportunities that might come your way that you might not think you're ready for, but you're going to take that leap and take that leap of faith. And there's no safety net underneath it, and that's okay. Because you're going to grow, you're going to experience new things that may feel a little different and uncomfortable, but you're going to push yourself each and every day. And then the real payback, I think, comes when then you're able to do what you really want to do and where you've got that heart and mind aligned together. That's when I always say true magic happens. And I've been blessed with a lot of magic right now.